Hey, I'm Bruce Franks Jr.
Hi, I'm Martin Zub.
Hi, my name is Joshua Damas.
Hi, I'm Thom Ernst Jr. from the High Note.
Star of St. Louis Superman.
Re-recording mixer on Beastie Boys Story.
I'm the director of Quebec City, and you are listening to Contrazoom.
And you are listening to Contrazoom.
And you're listening to Contrazoom.
This is Contrazoom, where we go back and forth about film. I'm your host, Dakota Arsenault. The 93rd Academy Awards just occurred, with Nomadland winning Best Picture, Director, and Actress, making it the most winning film of the ceremony and Hollywood's new top film for the year. The ceremony, which was held at Los Angeles Union Station instead of the usual Dolby Theater, with a much smaller audience and a revamped format, all while attendees were almost completely maskless. Joining me to talk about the winners, losers, and how badly I did in my prediction ballot is film critic Thom Ernst. You might remember Tom from last year when he came on episode 99, the 2020 Oscar recap, and you more likely know him for his work on the film review site Original Sin, his podcast This Movie's About You, and the host of TVO's Saturday Night at the Movies. Welcome back, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. That's a great intro. I'm going to correct you on one small thing.
Sure.
I've put aside This Movie's About You, but it's still up. People should listen to it. Thank you for the plug. But I got a new podcast called Rewind Fast Forward with the Kingston Canadian Film Festival.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's really a lot of fun, and we talk to Canadian directors, etc. So that's up, and that's the one that that's the one I would push people to see here.
Excellent. Yes, I'll make sure I include that in the show notes, and I'll promote that out so people check that out for sure. And my apologies for missing that. No.
Now,
it's interesting talking about Canadian festivals because I actually saw you pop up on my TV screen earlier last year during Cinefest Sudbury. I was watching My Salinger Year, and the movie ended, and all of a sudden they said, stay tuned for a Q&A with director Philippe Falardeau, and you showed up on my screen interviewing him.
Yeah. That was a fun interview. Did you enjoy it? Because there was that little bit, I think they kept it in, where I reminded him that we had a hamburger together. And Philippe said, well, I remember the hamburger. I don't remember you.
That must have been one memorable hamburger then.
I know, but I really enjoyed that. And then we did a few others. We did, because of the pandemic, the festivals didn't stop. And I have a good relationship with both Kingston Canadian Film Festival and Cinefest Sudbury. So they had me doing a lot of Zoom interviews like that. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I hope to see more of you on my screen during different festivals as well, as they continue to still be online.
Oh, there you go. Well, keep your camera on. You never know when I'll pop up.
All right, so we're talking about the Oscars, and I'm curious, did you get a chance to see a lot of the Oscar nominees, just the big ones? What were your confidence level as far as being aware of the movies?
Well, my confidence level is the same as it always has been, and the same as everyone's is, whether you see the films or not, because you really don't need to see the movies to try to accurately judge who's going to win, because there's no point system. Right? Mm-hmm. There's no marking. Even a gymnastics routine, but a gymnastics routine or any sport that is visual and does. And I use gymnastics because there's a certain amount of degree of personal opinion going in there to decipher whether the outcome was worthy of the marks. And but there's not a point system or certain things that you have to hit to make a winning film. So my confidence level, to answer part of your question, is the same as it's always been. Feeble at best. And my the amount of films that I watched connected to the festival, I think I saw probably most of them, and that is because of the year we had. There were fewer films, and fewer films of note that really sort of rose up and said, you got to see this. So there's movies that I might have ignored. Promising Young Woman, for example, if I hadn't heard of the everyone's saying you got to check this movie out. So this year I did better on my personal ballot, simply because there are less films to choose from, and I sort of did I did say there aren't points to hit, but there are certain points I guess you can look at if you want to have a better guess, and that is, what's the star's reputation? Have they done things to put them, make people mad in Hollywood? What is, what's the theme? Is it a theme that Hollywood voters like? That kind of thing. But it's still just a guessing game.
Yeah, and I feel like this past year more than any, because of theaters not being opened and so many different films being sold to streaming services, if you had a combination of a Netflix subscription, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus, you had the ability to watch almost all of the nominated films because they all eventually made it to those streaming services. Obviously, there's some that never did, and some that was like, if you're in the US, it made it to only Hulu or things like that, or HBO Max, what have you. There's some ones that are a bit outliers, but if you had one of those 3 subscriptions, you could see a good chunk of the nominees, which is a first for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, and at your own time. Like I didn't have to. I mean, part of it too is like I'm not saying let's not go back to theaters, and I'm really looking forward to seeing things like is it called Into the Heights, and the new West Side Story. I'm really looking forward to seeing those on the big screen. More so than the action films, although I've always enjoyed the Fast and Furious films on the big screen. But smaller films like Promising Young Woman and No Man Land and stuff like that, seeing those on the small screen at your leisure was really helpful. And so if somebody said, "Oh, did you see Manira?" and I go, "I haven't yet," and I go to the theaters and it's no longer there, I could stream it, and it was very convenient. Plus, being an insomniac, these are great ways to sort of spend your time instead of just tossing and turning. So.
Well, for the second year in a row, I did complete 100% of all the nominees. It was so much easier this year than it has been in any other year, so I was very happy about that. And of course, it's one of those things where the more movies you see, the less you actually know. I felt like I was very strong and confident with a lot of my predictions. And then, of course, all that goes out the window with someone who's only seen 2 of the films.
And yeah, it's amazing how that happens. I remember once winning a soccer pool, and I've never watched a game in my life. And boy, I tell you, sports fans who really do set up a chart and, get things all out. And I guessed. And the only reason I won that, I know why am I talking soccer, but it's just sometimes the less informed you are, the luckier you are.
Yeah. You understand, Brazil's a powerhouse. Italy is usually decent. England never makes it far. There we go. I know just
there
enough.
You go. I don't know how I did it. And it was players too I had to pick. And there was only one name I recognized. And I figured, well, he's got to be good.
Right? Yeah, exactly. All right. So I was curious about, did you have any preferences for who you wanted to win Best Picture out of the 8 nominees?
I would have loved to have seen Promising Young Woman win. That was a really powerful film. As a father of a young girl, teenager, it seemed to me something I wanted to show her. Again, the movie just spoke on such a different level. She was a difficult character to like, the main protagonist, yet you could empathize with her, and it was just a really important film, and it was so entertaining. Entertaining. And then people who decried that the film was sexist, anti-men, it rang to me a little bit untrue. It rang to me in the same way that people say all lives matter. It's just missing the point of that film. So I would have liked to have seen that. However, Nomadland, it was an easy win for me. It was America. It was America pared down to the whole sort of and yeah, like to pare down economic system to a group of people that a lot of America is becoming people who got sort of left out, pushed out, or otherwise lost everything. And so that movie sort of was a really positive spin on something that's really not positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I was glad to see that film win. I also thought The Father was a surprisingly good movie. I was not expecting to get into this film. I so loved this movie because of the way of the writing, and of course Hopkins' performance was stunning. And I've always absolutely loved watching Olivia Colman. I think that she knocks it out of the park every time. And I thought, okay, it's going to be a film where those two performances rule the picture. But the picture was written, or the script was written in such a way that it was able to display or illustrate a disease, Alzheimer's in this case, in a way that I don't think it has ever been depicted. It had a little bit of M. Night Shyamalan in it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it. If I had the name in front of me, I can say it. But there
Shyamalan, yes.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a kind of his twist in there that astounded me, and I absolutely love. So any three of those pictures, if they had won, would have been great, and
Mm-hmm.
one of them did. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. This was a year where normally I find myself indifferent to several of the Best Picture nominees, and other than Mank, which I enjoyed, but I would not say I loved in any sense.
No, it wasn't Best Picture material.
No, not by a long shot. But the other 7 nominees, I had a hard time. I would have had a hard time being angry at any of the other 7 winning if that was the case, where I could see they all had their merits for me.
Yeah. Manera is worth talking about too on that level, because I left that out, but it was the kind of film I would have seen with my folks as a kid. A big scope movie, and particularly about immigrants, because there is always that sort of if you're moved to be this way, and I think most people are, where you want to see the underdog, and I don't think there's anything wrong with calling that family the underdog in this particular situation. Win. And the fact that they have such other strong ties in there just really elevated that movie to a level that was really an experience rather than just a story, right? And so it had the same kind of elements that made Places in the Heart, considered a classic, and not so much Raisins in the Sun, but The Good Earth. I think far better than The Good Earth, but that's another movie. I would not have been disappointed. I would have been shocked,
Mm-hmm.
but I would have been shocked with a big smile on my face.
Yes, yeah, I agree. That was my number 1 pick, but very close behind that was The Father, Promising Young Woman. It was a pretty strong slate overall, and I think it just really had to do with the fact that as much as I love Spielberg and Wes Anderson and Paul Thomas Anderson and all these big budget prestige directors, Denis Villeneuve, all these guys who normally have these big prestige films, none of them were eligible, and so that allowed us to have A Sound of Metal, A Promising Young Woman, a Minari to be able to be in the same conversation and truly be celebrated for the best films of the year.
You have raised a very good point, so I'm going to ask you a question if that's okay.
Sure.
So, Do you think this will change the face of the Oscars then, or was that a question you had for me that you're going to ask me down the line?
No, I think that's a good thing to think about. I do unfortunately think it's maybe a bit of a one-off. I know that the Academy as a whole, the members that are involved in the Academy, they're trying very hard to not just be old white straight men. And so they're doing a great job of getting more people of color, more women involved, younger people involved. And so I think there's going to be some slow demographic shifts as far as the types of movies that get nominated and maybe even win. But I think the Academy as a whole, especially like every year, I think it's Vanity Fair publishes those anonymous Oscar ballots. And every year, you slap your head against a wall and you go, these people are in charge of handing out these awards. What is wrong with these voters? And they talk about how they didn't see any of them and they only went with one because they recognized that their friend was a producer on it or some nonsense like that. And so I think that's still unfortunately going to be a large portion of Oscar voters. Does this mean that maybe we'll get stuff like Sound of Metal Minari and Promising Young Woman, the sort of smaller, slow burning, edgier films that really take a unique look at humanity? I really hope so. But like all we have to do is look at all the movies that were pushed from last year to this year and go, what are they going to ignore? Dune? Are they going to ignore The French Dispatch? Are they going to ignore In the Heights, West Side Story, whatever PTA calls his new movie?
I know. Why doesn't he tell us? But okay, yeah.
Because apparently it's about the making of A Star is Born.
No kidding. It's about a kid actor too, right?
Yes. It's about the producer of A Star is Born, the Barbara Streisand version. So Bradley Cooper is playing the producer of that movie. That's what it sounds like.
Okay, because I read something about a child actor. It's a child actor in Hollywood, but with a P.T. Anderson movie, it could be about 4 things.
Yes.
So anyway, I don't want to distract you. You're on a really good point. You bring up P.T. Anderson. I had that question, so.
Oh, he always makes me tingle too. But yeah, all those movies I mentioned, plus a bunch more. What's that? Probably going to be at least 3, maybe 4 of the Oscar nominations for Best Picture, and then suddenly you're taking out some of those smaller films because, you know, stuff like Mank and Trial of Chicago 7, while they were Netflix movies, they're still fairly, you know, big budget, prestige-y type of films when you get names like David Fincher and Aaron Sorkin involved. And so there you go. You got like 6 or 7 of the nominees, and then you're left with maybe 2 or 3 of the smaller ones, which is where you get your Moonlights and films like that. And Nomadland, I think, would have made the cut regardless. But how likely are we to get this slate of some really great, smaller, diverse films? And that I don't think is really going to move forward, at least not on a year-over-year basis of a big change like this one.
Absolutely. I agree with you. There's no way you're going to be able to ignore those big films. And a lot of the movies that were like Sound of Metal was a movie I don't think would have come up, maybe Best Actor in any other year, maybe, and certainly in sound editing, it would have come up. But the amount of attention it got last night, I don't think would have happened. I do want to say, Mank, I have to say, that's a ridiculous thing. Of course I don't have to say it. I just have the opportunity to say, what a letdown. Fincher, who is a great director, the subject, the era, all of that is so, there's so much to do with that. And I don't know why Fincher dropped the ball on that. And it feels to me like he really did drop the ball.
The only thing that I can think that seems to be the case is he seemed to be so committed to his father's screenplay. And that, unfortunately, was a bit of the issue for me, was just the screenplay structuring just really didn't work. And he was so committed to using Jack Fincher's screenplay as it was written in memory and honor of his now passed father. And that was his downfall, I think.
Yeah, I think if we learn nothing from the Simpsons episode where Danny DeVito is the long-lost brother of Homer Simpson, and his love and affection for him ruins his career. It ruins his entire auto factory. And I think if we learn nothing from the Simpsons, learn that. You can't rely on your relatives to, no matter what your devotion is.
In theory, it was a great idea, his father writing this beautiful screenplay and him wanting to do it justice. And he was the only person that could bring it to life. And it sounds wonderful. And this idea of this homage to the real creator behind one of the greatest films of all time, that all sounds so great, so excellent. And a movie that exactly. And as soon as it was announced, David Fincher, Citizen Kane, sign me up. That sounds exactly the sort of thing I'd be into. And I was so disappointed overall.
Yeah. So was I. you know, and the performances they brought in what they could, but yeah. Anyway.
Yep. Yeah. All right, so I think maybe we should talk a little bit about the actual show itself, because there are a lot of thoughts to be had about this show. Steven Soderbergh was brought in to produce the show, and right away he started giving interviews talking about how it's going to be more of a movie event and not an award ceremony, and people were scratching their heads, what does that mean? And the way talking about the setup and all this sort of stuff, and it was something, wasn't it?
Certainly that opening sequence with Regina King walking in was definitely, I just expected to see George Clooney and, Matt Damon and the gang show up to do, Ocean's 14. It had that great feel of her walking in, and it had the Soderbergh, even though that I don't believe he directed that, but it had that Soderbergh feel to it. And I really, with the starring, I thought that was brilliant. I loved that. And I thought this is going to be unique and wonderful. And it was for the first while, and maybe because I, get up at 4 in the morning and stay up and do work, by the time the clock was ticking towards 10, I actually said, for the first time, if I didn't have something to do, like talk with Dakota about this the next day, I think I might just read about the winners in the morning. It wasn't able to hold me. And I think the breaking point for me was this song, nominated, not nominated, won. Or that was the trio. That was a failed bit of comedy. And other than the Glenn Close bit, which Glenn Close kind of schooling him on the song, if that was in fact real and not acted, that would have been brilliant. But as it was, it felt all very sort of done previously, so there was no spontaneity except maybe Glenn Close doing the dance.
Yes.
Which probably was spontaneous and quite wonderful, and saved that bit. Just saved it. That's all.
Yeah, her energy and charisma saved that bit, but for the most part, it was. I wouldn't say it completely fell flat, but it definitely was awkward and sort of sucked the energy out of the room a little bit.
Absolutely. Even though I really did like the bit about the Purple Rain song, and well, that's a great song, so it probably was ignored. It was good kind of, and
I like that punchline.
I liked it too. I hope it wasn't pre-planned, but it did make me realize that there was no comedy in this show last night. There was no funny musical number and they could have pre-recorded that, but I guess the decision to go without a host, which seemed to please my wife a great deal. She thought that was great. Always confirms to me that we need a host. As someone who was a host of a show that people kept saying this show could be hostless, I always support the host.
Yeah, it's tough because I know it's the most thankless gig you can do, where it doesn't really help your career if you host the Oscars, but it can definitely hurt your career. So I can see why a lot of people are really hesitant to want to be able to do it. But I hope they eventually go back to the host format. I think it's now the second year in a row that they haven't done it, and probably about the third or fourth time in the past decade that they haven't had a host.
Yeah. Well, the host adds, I'm always disappointed that the host doesn't actually have more to do, and that the host disappears at some point. And I've never liked that. I think the host should remain like they did back. I've never seen these episodes, but I understand, like when Bob Hope did it, and those kind of guys, where they were there throughout. And they brought the comedy. They can have a quick snarky remark to something that happens. They respond to an event, or an occurrence, and it really adds a richness and a tone to the whole show. I know a lot of people say no to that, but I don't know if they're really truly Oscar night fans like I am. and want that. But there was no comedy. And I always liked the bit where they take, like, when David Letterman, who I think people sort of hold up to as one of the biggest failures as a host. Not in my books. I thought David Letterman was fantastic. I just think people didn't get him. But when Letterman does the auditioning for the Cabin Boy show, and all people doing auditions for different movies, like little jokes like that, it could have been done, and they didn't. So I missed that. I missed the comedy of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and hopefully they are able to do something a little bit better next year and learn from this as well. Because overall, the entire ceremony felt very serious, and that seems to be a general complaint. Was it just seemed so serious and so dour?
Yeah, there was a lot of that. And sometimes that was really. The honesty of that was really sort of appealing when Regina King said that if things had gone differently, I might have been in marching boots today. Those are very powerful statements. And one of during the guess what song was nominated, I forgot the name of the dude that did that. He also did
Lil Ray Howery?
Yes, you heard him mumble, and you probably caught it. This is the blackest Academy Awards ever. And that was great, and that really was so. I did look there around, and I did think this really the tipping point has really turned, or the turning point has come about, and it was lively, it was exciting, it was the kind of politics I like to hear, which is really, if you like the show or not, it depends on what your politics are.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for that it was really wonderful. And I forgot, was it Regina King who said, I know people hate when artists start preaching, and I know people say, you're an actor. Why is your opinion? You're a director, you're a writer. Well, I think actually, if you are an artist, your job is to convey what is going on in the world and translate that into something that is understandable, to something that can be grasped and looked at in a different way. Just like Promising Young Woman isn't about a woman who hates men.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the effect of that kind of trauma and the persecution that happens continually and how that weighs on someone. So an artist is absolutely capable and the right person to speak politics, because they interpret what they see. Maybe some of them don't have that, and maybe some of them are just movie stars and don't really take in the rest of the world the way they should. But you know what? The majority of them are thoughtful, interesting people with a voice and a and a place to express that voice, and they should.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I want to touch a little bit about I would call it, putting it nicely, the awkward presentation order. So normally, the show starts, they want to get people engaged right away. So they do a couple of the bigger awards. They'll usually do the supporting actor nominations. They'll probably start out with the more popular below the line categories, and then they'll get more into technical. And then they'll ramp back up to the bigger awards towards the end of the night, ending with Best Picture. But of course, all that seemed to be thrown out the window where we had Best Director about halfway through the show. When Chloe Zhao won that, it was, oh, okay, so I guess we know who's winning Best Picture now. Because it's not always the case where Best Director and Picture line up, but more often than not, it's a pretty safe bet to assume if someone wins Best Picture, the same movie's going to win Best Picture as well. And then, of course, doing Best Picture third to last with the two lead acting awards at the very end, where you're just basically throwing out the window. You're there to celebrate the Best Picture of the year. Everything else is basically superfluous at that point. Why are you doing that? And I understand why they wanted to do that, but boy, did that not work. And it absolutely backfired on their face when Anthony Hopkins ended up winning Best Actor over Chadwick Boseman, which was clearly their intention, was to end on a tribute to him.
Right. It's interesting. I wasn't as disappointed with that. I'm hearing your points and your reasons for that, and would say that yes, those are all very legitimate, and it probably is the take that most people have on that. With me, I always sort of welcome change, and I welcome the the audacity to do something different after 93 years. Could you imagine? Could you imagine the whatever room they sat in separately from, or whatever Zoom line they were on when they were discussing this, and someone had the audacity to say, "Let's not do Best Picture last." After 93 years. So I admire the fact that they tried it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it failed or succeeded, I'm probably still not admired, but mired in the whole idea that someone had the guts to change it. So when that settles down, when my respect for tipping the cartwheel, apple cart? Yeah, don't tip the cartwheel. Tipping the cartwheel, I did it again. Tipping the apple cart over, that takes guts, and so once that settles, maybe I'll go, yeah, that wasn't the best choice. But I'm glad they tried it. Absolutely glad they tried it. But it did have me, because I'm taking notes during this, and it did have me, when they announced Best Picture, I went, what the heck? Who's Best Actor then? And I must have missed something. And so I during that time, I'm sitting there frantically trying to figure out what it was I missed. How did I miss Best Actor? Until it dawned on me that they switched the order. I'm not as quick as you, Dakota. I didn't figure it out right away.
I almost missed a couple of awards by having to run to the bathroom during the very, very short commercial breaks.
Yeah. Yes. What did I? Yeah. I left at one point to do whatever. I don't know what it was, and but I think it was during an award that I was lukewarm interested in. So I won't say which one that was, because A, I can't remember, and B, that wouldn't be nice.
That's fine. But yeah, I felt there was a little bit of, I don't want to say Soderbergh wanting to play God a little bit, but in the way he was, if we are pinning whatever success or failure on the show, we are pinning it on Soderbergh, because he seems to be at least the one that wants to be the most vocal for taking credit for things, which obviously it's an entire committee that is approving or making any of these decisions. But two things sort of irk me. One, doing the actors at the end, especially finishing on Best Actor with, it really seemed like they were hoping that it would be a nice, beautiful, touching tribute to Chadwick Boseman, but then also having Riz Ahmed present the Best Sound Award, which we all kind of knew going in, Sound of Metal is definitely winning Best Sound. Like, not only was it the best of the year, you could put it up as maybe one of the best sound films ever made. And it just really felt like, oh, okay, so you knew ahead of time what movie was going to win, and you're just going to anoint it. And it just felt a little greasy to me. Yeah.
That whole thing, and even not being on stage. What did you think of that? Because it really, when you saw Daniel having to turn around to look at Laura Dern, if that felt awkward.
And there was a time with Chloe Zhao as well, when I think it was during the Best Director nominations, when they were announcing that, she was looking at the presenter announcing it, and then the person beside her was trying to tap her to be like, the camera's over here, and she's looking awkwardly and turns back to face the presenter, because that's what you do. You face the person that's talking.
Yeah. And she was really, bothered. You could tell she was annoyed by that, because she didn't want to be tapped and told to look the other way. This was her moment, and let her look to whatever direction she wanted. Yeah, that was an awkward moment. There was several awkward moments like that. Of course, the biggest one in my mind is Daniel's mention of his parents having sex.
Yes.
Holy mackerel! And the look of pride just completely left his mother and sister's face. He completely. It wasn't. They didn't react like, "Oh my God, Chad, you're in bed." They were astounded. The mother, actually, you could see her going, "What the hell is he talking about?" That was. I felt bad, and I thought about that even this morning. I thought, so what was the conversation? The conversation wasn't, "Congratulations, Daniel, this is great." The conversation, what are you talking about? It completely robbed the moment, because he was great for a long while. He went on too long, but he was great for a while. The other one, which wasn't as obvious and was kind of cute, is the little boy in Minari. Everything, you could see him in the audience on his game. As people walked by, he's on his game. I guess it was cute, Uh, but yeah, that I noticed a lot.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of the Daniel Kaluuya speech, I feel like there was a much more tactful way he could have said the exact same thing. Something like, "Thank you to my parents for meeting that one fateful day and having a family."
Yeah.
They're the exact same thing. You're still talking about your parents having sex, but you're not literally saying my parents had sex and I'm here.
Yeah. I mean, I think he was going for the laugh.
It was. It just was weird.
It was weird, and his mother's response was not in any way satisfying. His mother's response actually meant, I thought that boy is going to get in trouble when he gets home. He's not. That's not. Mm-hmm. She's not going to let that lie. I doubt.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned you thought that at least one of the speeches was too long, but overall it seemed like they were telling the award winners that they could take as long as that they needed. They weren't going to play them off the stage, but to read the room. So that was their subtle way of being like, you could take a long time, but please also be brief at the same time. Overall, I think that kind of worked because, there was a few times when there would be multiple winners that would go up on stage, and then the second the one person was done, they would start playing music. And so that was a little awkward a couple times. But for the most part, when it was an individual person going up and allowing them to go up, say the story that they need to say about what it means to them, but then also thank the important people behind them, I think that worked out wonderfully. And that way they weren't just rush being like listing every agent and publicist that has ever worked for them. And then, they don't get the chance to actually tell a story of what the award means to them.
I absolutely agree with you. It was sometimes it was awkward for me. I thought, Daniel's speech became awkward, and I thought I knew when he reached the end, and he kept going, and then ruined it, in my opinion. But yeah, most of them were so good, and it was wonderful to really hear what they had to say, even when they rambled a bit, rambled uncomfortably. That uncomfort, it comes from a place of being thrilled and happy. So is it really a discomfort? It's more of a uncertainty, but a pleasant uncertainty. And when they find their stride and they get it and they get to say what they want, particularly when they are actually sincere in what they're saying, as opposed to saying what they think sounds good. There was one person that came up and said something, the octopus teacher. That one was nice, but when he started to talk about, I think if you could befriend an octopus, what else is there? It sounded a bit strange. It sounded as if he was talking. Ooh, this would be a great way to end that. So when it was strained like that, it didn't work. But then the Thomas Vinterberg moment,
it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and I loved that, and I also loved to sort of say, these are the 2 points I wanted to bring up when we heard this is the blackest Oscars ever. Having someone actually say that and confirm it was really delightful for me. Because it was, and it looked like we reached a really great moment. But having Winterberg say, "I'm surprised I won," because let's face it, it's about 4 white depressed dudes teaching kids to drink,
Yes.
And as a member of the TFCA, Toronto Film Critics Association, I could tell you that in the discussions of I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but in the discussions we have with my colleagues, a lot of the concerns about that movie was because it was about 4 white middle class dudes who drank a lot and didn't have a lot to offer the world. Which was the point. But I mean, I'm glad Vinterberg acknowledged that. I'm glad he said, "Yeah, this is what the film's about. It's nothing exceptional other than the exceptional quality of what this film says and what it leaves you feeling with. And it doesn't have to be anything else." But he was surprised he won that. But his tribute to his daughter, which was just must have been heartbreaking. I don't understand, though, why the clip they showed from that movie, Another Round, was the very last scene in the film. I suppose,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I suppose it doesn't give away anything, but
I guess they just didn't want to have subtitles. That's the only thing I could think of.
Dakota, you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
But they had subtitles for other films, didn't they?
They did, yes. Yeah. Not a lot, but yeah. I think there was a trio of speeches that really hit the high mark as far as, they allowed them to be a little bit more stream of consciousness, but tell a story and thank the people. And Vinterberg was one of them. The other two being John Baptiste when he won for the score for Soul, which Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, I'm sure people would love to hear from them. They've won before. They've talked before. John Baptiste, it's his first time up there. He gave a stirring speech about the appreciation of both music and arts teachers in schools and the effect that they can have on young people. It was beautiful. And then, of course, Yoo Jung-yoon, who won for supporting actress for Minari, who, I know she was feeling a little bit flustered as far as feeling all the emotions and then trying to translate her thoughts from Korean to English, but it came out wonderfully. She was probably the funniest person the entire evening, frankly.
She really was. And it's delightful, and her, her starry-eyed affection for Brad Pitt was so cute. Did she say, because I didn't hear it, but somebody told me she said, did he say my name?
I think she said something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So that's just a lovely thought and moment. Apparently, backstage in the press room, and I got this through a tweet, I think, by Norman Wilner. Somebody tweeted this, that backstage, somebody asked her what Brad Pitt smelled like, because she got close. And she says, I didn't smell him. I'm not a dog. So I hope that story's true. But I did see Brad Pitt trying to keep the social distance there. Mm-hmm. She was having none of that.
She went right for his arm.
Oh, for his arm. And I think eventually he just gave up. But I think he was charmed by her. He, by the way, is a good man, I think by Hollywood standards. I think Brad Pitt is a decent human being, despite his stardom, despite some of, his reputations or past reputations for drinking and other things. But so it wasn't distasteful or uncomforting to see her get all starry-eyed over him, because you kind of get it, right? And I think he responded in kind. He was just very kind and gentle with her. Not that he shouldn't be. I mean, of course he should be, but it was just a real wonderful, authentic moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think we should absolutely note the fact that Chloe Zhao becomes the second woman to win Best Director, which is an absolute shame that there's only been two, mm-hmm. and also the first woman of color, which is such a huge honor for her. And I'm so happy that she ended up winning this. But I loved the diversity of the Best Director award, the nominees in general, because we had two women, we had, and then we also had a non-English man as well. So, Vinterberg being from Denmark. So it really made that category a whole lot more interesting and diverse. And hopefully that's something we can look forward to in the future. I don't really know, as far as, like I was saying, it went to include Spielberg and the Andersons and all those people, but it was beautiful for one night.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's be positive about this. Let's assume that people are going to look at this and say, let's take the best part of this and incorporate it from now on, because it really, you're right. The range there was beautiful. It's maybe because it was a smaller crowd, but also because I think of the diversity, that there was less of a feeling of, I don't want to say glamour. It certainly wasn't as glamorous as other seasons, but other years. But there was an element of it that was just like the attitude was gone. That
mm-hmm.
It had more of a. I don't know if you'll know what I mean when I say this, but I'll give it a shot. It had a more Patricia Arquette feeling than a Meryl Streep.
Yes, no, I understand what you mean by that. Yeah, when she won her Oscar, it felt very different than when Meryl Streep wins her Oscars.
Yeah, and that's not a slight against Meryl. Meryl's in a category, but Patricia Arquette just sort of seemed to, read off her notes. I mean, it was a pared down sort of image of stardom. Quick Patricia Arquette story. So I was a very young man. She was a very young woman. And I forgot what movie it was, but I went to see it at the festival. And I swear, anyway, I went up to talk to her afterwards just because that's what you did at the festival. And I got an opportunity to say hi. And I swear we connected. I swear that moment, there was like the music and the magic and everything was about, but, she got taken away, and our love affair never happened.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Now, I ended up meeting the love of my life shortly after, but but yeah, I've always thought Patricia and I, it could have been. It would have been over by now, because she'd have moved on to somebody else, like I don't know, Nicolas Cage. I don't know, who did she end up with?
Yeah. Two other sort of ceremony things I kind of wanted to bring up. One was the lack of movie clips that were shown for the nominees, especially for the actors that were nominated. I thought was a real shame, and I know that sometimes really bogs down the show and makes it longer, but like every time you talk about a movie, you watch a movie, and you watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and go, oh yeah, that's Viola Davis's Oscar moment. That's Chadwick Boseman's Oscar moment. You watch Sound of Metal, you go, yeah, that's Riz Ahmed's Oscar moment. And that's the clip that they're going to show when they're announcing them. And we didn't get that. And I know it's very trite to be able to boil it down to what's their most emotional scene. And that's the one they're going to be remembered by, or that's the one that's going to win the award. But at a certain level, you kind of want to be like, yeah, that's why I like that movie. That performance really hit the spot. And they didn't do that.
They did with some, yeah, but not overall, and I did miss that. I think the issue is, did I miss it enough for me to demand that it comes back? Because they wait to hear what I demand. I'll sick Patricia Arquette on them. If they do it, then I mean, you kind of have to do it for costumes. These are the costumes, and show them that. And I do think with all those clips, it becomes bogged down. So part of me, maybe it was because I was exhausted, and I was thinking, okay, I hope this doesn't go to midnight, and it didn't. But maybe I was kind of rushing it along a bit, so I didn't miss it as much as I could. I did notice it was gone. And I did notice that, they did it for Best Actor, and they did it for Best Actress, right? Correct? Best Actor.
No, they didn't. Yes, you're right. Yeah. They did. They did it for the lead actors, but they didn't do it for the supportings.
No, that's what I remember. Yeah. So maybe you make this kind of executive decision that you do it for Best Picture, you do it for the visuals. Well, Best Picture because it's the King Award or Queen Award, whatever. It is the award. And then you do it for performances because that, as you suggested, matters. And then hopefully everybody else will understand and not, demand equal time.
No, I agree. And I think the only other one ceremony bit I want to kind of call out a little bit is the In Memoriam video. It was a bit of an awkward song choice. Obviously that segment usually really drags and kind of changes the tone and the atmosphere of the show, where it's a really long, slow, drawn out ballad, which understandably, when you're talking about people who pass away, you don't want a nice chipper number, as the Stevie Wonder song that they chose kind of was. And also the video was so rushed where, the beginning, you go, oh, Cecily Tyson, oh, and so, oh, yeah, I remember they passed. And then once they started getting to the people who work behind the scenes, I couldn't even read their names. They were flashing by too quickly.
It was too quick. And I was watching the tweets. One of my favorite people to follow on Twitter is Norm Wilner from Now Magazine. He's got a great sense of humor. And so I was following him, and he was talking about how much he appreciated the music choice, or at least he was sort of edging around the idea that maybe this was great. And I understand that you might want to take these in memoriams and make them a celebration of their life, as opposed to something, oh my God, this is sad. And that was a nice. I don't think it worked. Norm Wilner was hedging his bets that it was. So I don't know. My feeling was exactly like yours. It went too fast, and the music. Although I do think it's a good idea to maybe try something that's not somber, and try something that is celebratory. What was what song did they play? It was a Stevie Wonder tune. What song?
It was. It was called As.
Yeah, and I was listening to the lyrics to see how it worked, and it did kind of, but there was something about the movement of the video and the timing of the music and the beat of the music that felt like it was out of sync.
Mm-hmm.
Not just emotionally, but you could almost sense that if their lips were moving, that it wouldn't be in time to the words you were hearing.
No, I agree. I do like the idea of maybe making it more of a celebration and not let's depress the hell out of everyone at home and in the audience. Mm-hmm. But it just slightly did not work. It started out kind of okay when they were taking a little bit more time and showing the images, but then as soon as they start rapid firing, going through them all, and the beat was picking up in the song, it just completely lost me. Where it's like it's hard to care at that point.
You're right. I almost thought that my daughter was listening to music, and that was seeping in, except that she would never listen to Stevie Wonder, sadly. But it didn't sound like it belonged there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. All right, and now I think the last sort of thing I kind of want to hit on is interestingly enough, it sort of seems we're now past the age of these super dominant films winning everything. I'm perfectly fine and of the mindset that one movie does not often do the best in every category and does not deserve to win 8, 9, 10 Oscars. I'm fine with not having another Return of the King or Titanic or Ben-Hur winning 11 Oscars. I'm fine with that. And so Nomadland only winning 3 Oscars and that being the big winner. Last year, Parasite was the big winner with 4. And then everyone else getting 2 or 1 Oscars. I'm totally fine with that. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've never thought that there, the sweep was always sort of a confusing concept to me. It does sort of speak to people's passion of a certain film and how that sort of affected, their viewing of it and where it'll, stand in history. But other than winning a whole bunch of awards and sweeping, the only real gain of that is that you become a trivia question at some point. And, perhaps maybe there's a financial gain, there's bragging rights, whatever. I'm also keenly aware, the older I get, that the celebratory feel, the love we feel for the actors that win or who did really, really great on stage or delivered a really good speech is gone by the time we get to the next Oscars. So a sweep doesn't matter. A sweep will be forgotten mostly until the next year. And I also at the same time don't say that, well, I don't like voting in the way that says, well, we already gave them 3 awards, so let's not give them 1 more. I think you got to vote with completely with your heart and soul on this. To the film that you think should win an award. And if that means 1 sweeps, okay. But I don't think it's essential.
Mm-hmm. It almost seems more and more that, especially with this year, it seemed like a lot of the films had people involved that were nominated in multiple categories. So we take Nomadland with Chloe Zhao. She was individually nominated for 4 awards. She was a producer on the film, so she got Best Picture. She directed it, obviously. She wrote the screenplay, and she also was the film's editor. And so she could have... Yeah, so she could have walked away theoretically with 4 Oscars. And when I was making predictions, I was not expecting Nomadland to sweep everything, but normally the Best Picture one kind of sits above the rest as far as the number of total awards it gets. And so I was putting it down for both film editing and cinematography. It should have won cinematography in my opinion, but that's besides the point. But just because this idea of, Nomadland's probably going to win 4 or 5, maybe 6 awards. So what are the ones that are most likely at that point as well? And they seem to really be spreading it around. Emerald Fennell was nominated for 2 awards. She won her screenplay, but she didn't win for director. Florian Zeller was nominated for a couple of awards himself too. So it really did seem like they were trying to maybe spread the love out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that might have been sort of a prerequisite for them in their voting. But, they don't vote in groups, right? They don't vote in a sealed room. So, presumably it's an individual choice unless they call each other and discuss it. But, yeah, I did think, can I just say one of my surprises in the film,
Sure.
in Last Night's Events, was Tyler Perry. Because I cannot put together, in my mind, the man I saw on stage who delivered that passionate sort of selfless speech, with the movies I see or have not seen, because I haven't been able to get through any of them, of Tyler Perry's movies. And this is speaking to ignorance now, my ignorance. Tyler Perry Studios, Tyler Perry successes. I had no idea that this man achieved so much. I just thought I was classing him as kind of the Pauly Shore of films that has all these films that kind of just come in, and I try to watch them. I try to watch Boo, couldn't get through it. And yet, when he got up there and he made this speech, and you heard what he did, and you hear that he came, homeless, almost without shoes. I think he said his shoes were decrepit, whatever. And the lessons he's learned from his mother and how what he's achieved so far. How old is he? He's in his 40s?
He's probably around that age, yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So my ignorance on Tyler Perry was really smashed, broke. And I'm glad it was. I look at the man differently. I don't know. Where are you in the Tyler Perry camp?
No, I'm completely in the same boat. I've only watched from start to finish one Medea film, and that was probably over a decade ago now. And I thought it was just about the worst thing I've ever watched. The only other thing I've seen him in was in Gone Girl, where he was absolutely fantastic as
Gone Girl, yeah.
This skeezy lawyer does a fantastic job at that. But other than that, every time I see one of the trailers for one of his films, I'm not his target audience. And then it's so interesting. So he's just someone who just absolutely occupies no amount of space in my nonstop stream of consciousness thinking about movies. I think about movies all the time and what people are doing and working on all this sort of stuff. I never think about Tyler Perry, except for the time where one of his movies comes out and you look at the box office report and you're like, wait, I didn't even hear about this movie. How is this the #1 movie in the United States? And then it disappears the next weekend. But it seems like clockwork. Every single time he releases a movie, he's got this really dedicated fan base that come out in droves. It's mostly church groups that will book entire theaters for a weekend where they just do showing after showing after showing. And it's made him this powerhouse, but he's almost completely invisible to the rest of the movie industry. And it's shocking.
Okay, so it's not just me.
No.
I thought, am I missing something? But when I try to watch Boo, because I thought, okay, it'll be as kind of a spoof of horror films. I'm going to enjoy this. The first whatever with Tyler Perry dressed in a grandma outfit, I think it's him. And the dialogue was just so forgettable, and not just forgettable, but annoying. But what you say, I'm not the target audience. And I'm surprised church groups are the target audience. Maybe they just want to support his cause. But you know what? For whatever his feelings are, in my limited view, whatever his feelings are as a filmmaker, he makes up for in other ways. And I hope his foundation is as sincere as they made it appear to be. But his speech was motivating and heartfelt. And it just, he said something about judgment in his speech. And he said, one day I wish we had time to talk about judgment. And then he just let that go. And I thought, you're absolutely right, because my judgment with this dude was way off.
No, you're right. Yeah. I sincerely hope that the stats and statistics and stories that they pulled about his humanitarian work that earned him that Oscar are all accurate. Because if that's the case, he might be one of the most selfless, bigwigs in Hollywood. Because, it's very easy for once you get to that status level of owning your own studios and things like that, where it's just easy to throw some money at a charity and call it a day.
Yeah.
But building a studio and employing the people that he employs and giving the work opportunities and training people that want to be involved but don't necessarily have an avenue to get involved in the film industry, that's worth more than whatever you can boil that Oscar statue down and sell it for.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dakota, 100%. I am now maybe almost willing to watch a full Tyler Perry movie, a Medea movie, just to support his foundation. Just to, that feels like it could be, at least my contribution to the cause.
Mm-hmm. Maybe what I'll do is I'll rent it on iTunes, but not watch it. So he still gets the money, but I don't have to sit through it.
I know. Are we being cruel? I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe we are. Thom, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your wisdom, your stories, especially the Patricia Arquette one. That's an all-timer. I really appreciate it. What is the best place for people to follow you and find your work?
Okay, I always tend to forget what my, I'm on Twitter. I think it's just @RealThomErnst. I hope that's it. I've never, it's like not knowing your own phone number because you never have to call it. So that's good. And can I just take a moment to tell you about a new website that I've started? And I'm really hoping to. I haven't really found what my my mission statement yet, and I'm still looking for it. And I have a website called Outside Voice, and it's intended for people who have experienced either firsthand or otherwise through family members, etc. The effects and trauma of sexual abuse, particularly in males. But the site is designed so that it's a safe place, whether you are transgender, however you identify, whether you're a woman, or otherwise. Please come if this is something that you can relate to. It's www.outsidevoice.info. That's my new website. I'm hoping it'll grow. I'm hoping people will look at it. People will be able to relate to it. I hope people contribute to it, not financially. I'm talking about just contributing their voice. And I also will put out there that if you are someone that is interested in getting involved in getting this message out there of support, please let me know, because I'm trying to bang out a mission statement. I'm trying to figure out where this can go, and I'm trying to figure out where it could be best utilized. So, outsidevoice.info.
Awesome. I will make sure to absolutely plug that and leave that in the show notes. And I really do hope people check that out, because that is a phenomenal thing that you're doing. And congratulations. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you. And Dakota, this may be only the second time or third time I'm on your show.
This is the second time.
Yeah, I love being on this show. Yeah, I love your attitude. I love your interaction and the back and forth that you offer. And so please, keep me in mind for whatever little thing you have that pops up that you want to chat about.
Oh, of course. I absolutely need to have you back on. You're a terrific guest, and I really do enjoy talking film with you.
Great.
That wraps up our Oscar coverage for this year. It's the end of our 6th season. We're off next week, but we'll be back the following one with our Hot Docs coverage and the return of Rachel Ho. I want to thank all of my guests and everyone that contributed to the show this past year. I ended up producing a whopping 44 episodes this season. Follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook @contrazoompod, and let us know what you thought about the Oscars. Send an email to contrazoompod@gmail.com. Thank you to Eric and Kevin Smale for the theme music, and to Stephanie Pryor for the logo design. If you can rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts, it will be a huge help for us to grow and find new listeners. Thanks for listening.